Hi, and welcome to The Working World. I'm Karen Mendes.
And I'm Jamie Lingham.
And we have a great show for you today. We have spoken with Ryan Ghisi, the General Manager and People Global Programs for Xero, headquartered in New Zealand. Jamie, the thoughtfulness, the cutting edge side to this organization just blew me away. I don't know where to start.
Oh, Karen, I mean, I'm with you. I took a lot of notes through this because I thought a lot of, the stuff that we could apply and benefit. I think the fact that Ryan and Xero have such an inclusive culture, not only just, getting the staff to help them come up with solutions to their problems, but also, I suppose, their leading edge and innovative programs that just show that employee wellbeing just isn't about lip service. COVID has certainly accelerated it, but this is a company that was practicing this for many years before COVID hit.
Yeah. But I mean, like they took simple barriers in the way of certain things, like even accessing EAP services, right? Like I've used that before myself. I know how laboursome it can be just to get a booking. So they've just taken those things, brought down all the barriers, unpacked all the support initiatives, and just taken that kind of health and well-being to the next level.
Absolutely, starting to think about looking at how to look at sleep patterns in employees, which is, in my mind, it's just actually taking that extra step. I think that, as we always say, if you get, if our listeners get one thing out of the show, it's done well. I think for this show with Ryan, I think they'll get multiple. And it's really, if you can take that and add that into your mobility program, I think you're going to be streets ahead of everyone else. So, I just say enjoy the show.
Yeah, enjoy, guys.
Hi, Ryan. Welcome to The Working World. How's it all going?
Hi, Ryan. Welcome. Lovely to see you.
Hi, team. Good to be here. Thanks for the opportunity to come along and talk today. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Glad to join you here from Auckland in New Zealand.
Thanks for joining us, Ryan. It's super excited to speak to you about some of the initiatives that Xero is doing, especially in relation to employee well-being. So if you don't mind, I'm going to jump straight to the questions because I'm eager to hear all about it. And I understand that you've invested significantly in employee well-being initiatives recently. And I wonder if you could tell us how those initiatives have supported your people and what your future plans are around delivering support around people's mental health and physical well-being.
Cool. Yeah, let's talk about that in a couple of ways. Let's talk about what we've been doing recently. So one of the initiatives that we run or tools that we offer to our employees, like most employers do, is our EAP, so our Employee Assistance Program.
Sure.
Now, a couple of years ago, we did a bit of a review and we felt there was an opportunity for us to kind of frame our EAP. For a lot of companies, it tends to be poster on a wall, phone this number if you've got an issue, if you've got a problem. So, often looked at from the kind of ambulance at the bottom of the cliff perspective. And so we felt we could do something a little more with that. And following a bit of research and speaking to some providers, we ended up partnering with a company called Benestar. So we use them in New Zealand, Australia, and a couple of other regions. And there's a couple of things that we really liked about them. Firstly, they've got an online web platform and they have an app. And it's available to all our employees and their families. And there's everything from articles and videos, activities, modules. It covers everything from mind, body, work to relationships, family and money. But most importantly, it's got a part of the functionality is called My Coach. So the intention with that is to give employees the ability to go and get some coaching and support for all the aspects of their life, but preempting an issue. So not waiting until they have a problem, but getting advice and getting coaching on all those different aspects of their well-being to help them be more resilient and be more healthy and well. And so what we also did with that as well, particularly during 2020 and going into 2021, we know that there's a lot of barriers even to using that service. And so we tried to facilitate that by scheduling some one-on-ones for our employees and just allowing them to sign up to those slots. So they didn't even have to phone up. They didn't even have to contact the EAP. They just had to book the slot and we'd connect them directly with a a specialist who could help with their inquiry and help with the support and coaching they needed. So that's kind of one area that we've looked at kind of more broadly and holistically relating to our employees' well-being.
Mm-hmm.
One initiative I'd love to talk about that we started about 3 or 4 years ago was mindfulness. So, again, mental well-being is always something that's been really important. We know it's something that a lot of our employees struggle with. Xero is a very high pace, high change, high growth environment, and with that can come, some stress. And so we looked at what else could we do other than EAP, other than the kind of courses and learning and support that we put in place for employees. And we trialed a mindfulness program. So it was an 8-week course. It was a scientifically based, mindfulness-based stress reduction course. And we measured people before, after, and 6 months later. And we asked them questions around stress and resilience and productivity, being present, etc. And the results were just incredible. The people who attended that pilot course had huge reductions in stress, huge improvements in resilience, huge improvements in productivity, and basically positive improvements across all the measures that we put in place. And so we went on a bit of a journey of rolling that strategy out, and we called it High Performing Minds, rolling that program out across all of New Zealand. To date, we've had over 450 employees attend that 8-week course. And then we've wrapped a lot of support around that. So we have champions, we have weekly drop-ins, we have a sort of level 2 course where you can deepen and strengthen your practice, lots and lots of resources. So, one of the examples of an initiative that we took a longer term strategic approach to, and was certainly about long-term positive behaviour change. So that was really great. That's a couple of examples of what we're doing at the moment. Future plans, it'll get super interesting. So, where we've had our offices open up to a certain extent, like many companies, we found people are falling into this kind of hybrid routine. So they're coming into the office 2 or 3 days a week. They're at home maybe 2 or 3 days a week. And so when we're thinking about some of the initiatives that we want to run around wellbeing, we've got to be thinking more online and virtual, just to ensure that we're keeping it open to everyone, and we're keeping it open, particularly to those employees who aren't coming into the office as often. So a couple of things we've done recently, that we're going to do more of. Again, our EAP, we typically get someone in once a year at least to come in and talk about EAP. Here's the service, here's what it's about, here's how it works. And so we got them in the office to do that, but we allowed everyone to join virtually for that session. And we had maybe 70 or 80 people in person, but we had about 160 online. And then we recorded that and shared it. And many more hundreds of employees watched that. Another example was nutrition. So again, we were trying to think a little bit outside of the box. How could we support employees holistically around their nutrition, accounting for time zones? Because we wanted to make this a global initiative. And so what we did, we created a Slack channel and we invited employees to email an external nutrition specialist, and they could have their inquiries, their emails responded to, and then some of those more common queries were anonymized and posted on Slack. So employees could go on and see those really common nutrition-based queries and questions answered and have access to all that great information. So we're going to look to do more of that. We're looking at that in the area of sleep as well. Sleep's quite a hot topic, or has been a hot topic for a couple of years for employees. So we might think about doing something similar to that kind of Slack online type approach, where it kind of breaks down barriers of where people are based and what the time zone is. So yeah, that's kind of the direction we seem to be heading in.
Right. I mean, all that stuff is so great, and it just, I'm fascinated by this. I mean, even the sleep stuff and the fact that you as an organisation, or Xero as an organisation, can care to a level with employees that, you want to know how they're sleeping and are they getting effective sleep, helping, their general well-being. One thing that I think we've noticed is a lot of people had mindfulness and they had employee care on their sort of radar pre-COVID. Obviously, you know, as you said, you've had high-performing minds. You've been thinking about this for years. How much of it do you think has been conceptually a great idea, and how much did COVID push up, up the priority chain? And how far is your ambulance? Is your ambulance now halfway down the waterfall? Is it at the top of the waterfall? Is it before we even get to the waterfall?
Yeah, great question. Look, we did do a lot pre-COVID. We did a lot around wellbeing, and we've had a more formal program and strategy in place for several years. I think what COVID did was it really made us think about how we could deliver on that program and strategy that we'd had in place remotely. And now it's certainly in New Zealand, it's a more hybrid approach. Other regions like the US and the UK, it's still absolutely virtual and remote. So we just had to think about how can we still support employees in the areas of the aspects of wellbeing that they've told us are really important, they really value. How can we still support and help them remotely and virtually? So that's kind of been the change for us. And then I guess the change in ways of working. So whether it be remote or whether it be hybrid, employees, the two big things that have come out. One is where they're working remotely and they used to have that commute time, whether it be 20 minutes or an hour, employees have kind of falling into not bookending their day anymore and just absorbing that time with more work. Not that there's been any pressure to, not that we've asked them to. So they naturally kind of fell into that. And so we've been trying to help them bookend their day and be more disciplined around how they manage their day, particularly when they're working remotely. And the other piece is, again, it's been lots of in the media about it, is way more video calls. And what we found is spending more time in front of a screen and on video calls versus those in-person meetings is much more mentally taxing and mentally exhausting. So, those are the kind of things that we've had to think about more. How do we care for employees in those kind of respects and aspects of their well-being?
Yeah, around that, I guess the kind of digital mindset or digital first mindset is a focus area for a lot of organizations, and definitely sounds like Xero's done a lot of thinking and put a lot of initiatives around in place since COVID's the pandemic's come into play. I wonder though, what role, in your opinion, the less kind of focused area of the office environment now plays in the importance of, supporting that digital mindset, supporting that remote working, and driving that initiative, collaboration, and I guess the human social context side. I wondered if you could speak to that a little bit, please.
Yeah, look, for us, the office environment has been a huge part of our culture. I've been here 5.5 years, and there's so much that Xero has done and continues to do in relation to the employee experience, but specifically the workplace experience. We pre-COVID had a very small number of employees who worked remotely permanently. We had a very open approach to flexibility, and many employees pre-COVID already worked flexibly ad hoc, particularly ad hoc, very few permanent arrangements in place. So the office environment, the workplace experience was key to our culture and our overall employee experience. So we were a little concerned, right, when we kind of realized the severity of COVID and thinking beyond COVID and what was going to happen when things started to return to normal. Were employees were they going to want to come back to the office, and how is that going to impact our culture and that human social connection and the sparks of innovation that come from those random encounters in the office? So, we serve, as we do, and we love data at Xero. We love being a data-driven company, particularly making data-driven HR decisions. And so we surveyed employees throughout COVID on a whole range of topics. And, one of them was starting to think beyond offices being closed and reopening. And, fortunately, the vast majority, from recollection, over 90% of employees wanted to come back to the office at least one day a week. So we kind of had this collective sigh in HR where we're like, oh, thank goodness. But we've had to think about reframing, when offices do reopen, what are employees coming back into the office for? What are the types of work and interactions they're doing? And it is more those team planning sessions, whiteboarding, collaboration, literally that human social, catching up with their peers, having a coffee, those random encounters that they have that often lead to sparks of innovation and ideas. And so there's a lot more that we're doing, including with wellbeing in the office, to continue to encourage employees to keep coming back in and to keep coming back in regularly. But the reality is, we are certainly in a world now already where hybrid is the new normal. And for the vast majority of employees, they do want to come back in, but I'd say the average from recollection is somewhere around the kind of 2.5 days a week in the office and 2.5 days at home. So yeah, it's going to be a bit more of a challenge with remote roles, because that's, I know another topic that's kind of quite hot, particularly in the technology sector. So yeah, that's certainly another area we've got to think about.
Just on that, Ryan, I mean, this whole, it sounds like you actually have to do a whole policy on how you're going to return back to the post-COVID normal. And are you putting those policies and procedures in place? And I think more importantly, how do you deal with the people who don't want to get on public transport to come in, who don't want to travel the distance in, who enjoy kicking around in leisure wear or gym wear the whole time, and they get the pushback? So how do you manage that sort of multi-speed? It's not even two-speed anymore, isn't it? It's multi-speed. How do you plan for that? How do you put that in a policy and a procedure? And that's more for, I suppose, I'm sure a lot of mobility practitioners are, who are watching this show and around the world are thinking the same thing, like how to actually quantify that and qualify that as a communication, what's acceptable and what's not.
Yeah, it's interesting. So, again, pre those surveys, we were really hoping that employees did want to come back when the offices reopened, and they told us that through their answers and their feedback. What took us a while, and Xero's always been policy light and guideline heavy. So here is a framework, here are some guidelines. We're not going to tell you exactly how you need to do things. We trust and empower you to do the right thing. So, after a lot of consultation, a lot of discussions, a lot of seeking feedback, where we landed was that we went out with a message that was heavily kind of saying, the office is really important for us. It's really important for our culture. It's really important for that human social connection. We want you to be coming into the office regularly, and how you told us that. We are not going to tell you when you need to do that or how often you need to do that. There's a lot of companies who are like, you have to come in 3 days a week. You have to come in Monday and Friday, whatever. We didn't want to do that. What we wanted to do, and again, this is what employees told us, was they wanted to determine that within their teams. So we went out very clearly, and there was a lot of support and guidance for leaders on this. Speak to your team and talk as a team and agree what's going to work for you. If you all want to be in on Tuesday and Thursday, and those are the days that work for you, do that. If you all want to be in on a Wednesday because you've got a planning session, or you want to have a bit of a brainstorm, then do that. In terms of those outliers, there's very few. As I say, we had very few remote working employees, permanent remote working employees before. Most were within a reasonable commute at the office. Most did absolutely want to come back to the office at least a day a week. So we really didn't have a huge issue with employees who suddenly were like, I don't want to come into the office again. And those were dealt with on a case by case. They, spoke to their managers. They worked something out again that had to work for the team. So that's kind of how we approached it. Not policy, not dictating, not down to the individual either. Down to the team, and where needed, supported by HR to kind of come to those agreements and those arrangements. And always throughout, what was key was feedback. Whatever arrangements were put in place, constantly asking and providing feedback. Is it working? If it's not working, what do we need to change? How can I support you? How can I help you? How can Xero help and support you? So, that constant feedback as we're going through, snap lockdowns and coming back, offices open, offices closed, was really important.
Yeah, I guess, with the appetite for permanent remote working arrangements growing, but maybe we're already at the saturation point for that. I wondered if you could talk to Xero's point of differentiation, because I guess what we're finding at an Australian domestic level, and it may be the same in New Zealand, is there's a lot of domestic poaching, for the use of a better word, I guess, around talent and the top talent, right? And so I wonder what Xero's point of differentiation is around not only attracting, but retaining the talent you have around remote working. How do you see yourselves different?
Yeah, for sure. Look, again, throughout the lockdown that we had here and offices being closed, we were constantly, as I say, surveying employees and getting feedback, which was allowing us on the fly to develop and broaden out the wellbeing resources we had, provide a lot of support for managers and helping their teams, supporting them remotely, ensuring everyone had access to the right digital tools to help them kind of collaborate and work efficiently. But there were new things that we introduced. So, because some of these lockdowns happened so quick and we closed so quickly, a lot of people just didn't have the equipment and the setup at home. So really quickly, we set up the ability for employees to go and purchase that equipment they needed to have a good, robust setup at home and be able to work productively. It was just a no-brainer for us. And we've continued that. If you are working from home, a significant proportion of your working month, then there is an allowance that you're able to draw on. So, that was one of the things that we put in place. The remote working piece, yeah, it was interesting. We were a little nervous around that up front. We didn't really want to encourage people to be working from home permanently because of that aspect that I talked about, the office, the working environment being really key to our culture. But the reality is, we're continuing on this huge growth trajectory. We have massive pressures on our recruiting. We have other organizations that are now coming into our market from overseas. There is a proportion of candidates and employees who do want to work permanently remotely and not necessarily that's in a commutable distance from an office that we've got. So, that's what we're working on at the moment. We are looking to announce something this month formally on that at a really high level. Essentially what it means is every role and every employee will eventually have the opportunity to work remotely. Certainly every role that we'll recruit, we will be open to it being remote. They will have that allowance in place that we already had for current employees. And what we want to do is ensure that they're still being absorbed into and having exposure to that workplace environment. And so the intention is that every quarter, wherever they're based, we will fly them into their nearest local office and they will spend time with their teams and their peers at least every 3 months. So that's kind of where we're at with that. We're feeling pretty, excited and a little nervous around it, but we're diving in head first, and we'll see how it goes.
It's exciting.
Yeah,
very exciting. Look, I love the way how you get your whole team involved to set their expectations and how to manage the policy. But I suppose further to Karen's question, just on the attraction and retention, I mean, it's a bit funny, right? Because this whole prospect of employee wellbeing has been a thing, as we said earlier, for you years ago, and it has certainly brought it to the fore in COVID. How important do you think having a work from home strategy will be for the attraction and retention? Like, will that be, do you think that's the next frontier as far as employing staff goes? Like, I'm not talking about how we've got a great brand. I'm talking about how well we look after you, the work from home, what benefits we give you. How important do you think that is going to be, not just for Xero, but for all companies moving forward?
Yeah, look, it's a reality. I was talking about how important flexibility was, probably 4 years ago now at Xero, and this was obviously way pre-COVID, and saying it was not a benefit. I had peers coming up to me saying, "Oh, it's great, Xero's approach to flexibility, it's so awesome, you've got that." I said, look, it's not a benefit, it's not a perk. Like, this is a reality. Candidates, from several years ago were asking us, one of the first questions, what's your approach to flexibility? How do you kind of work in where and work in when, and how does Xero approach that? So, this is now a reality. Again, this is like, currently we can't be thinking, oh, in 12 months time, what are we going to be doing about remote working? This is a reality. Certainly in areas like the States, where we have offices, Americas and the UK, just by virtue of the geography and the size of those countries. But yeah, certainly in Australia and New Zealand, we're going to have employees who, you know what, I don't want to live in the big smoke anymore. I want to go and live out regionally, have a better kind of lifestyle, and still be able to kind of work in the same way that I can at Xero. We're going to have candidates who aren't necessarily located in the city that we have an office. So, and we want to make sure that we're very clear around how we support them. We've got the tools in place. We're supporting and training our leaders to manage teams that are a combination of office and remote based, that our wellbeing's tailored to account for employees that aren't in the office regularly. And again, that they've got the support they need, whether it's an allowance to have the equipment they need, whether it's support to ensure that they are well from a mental and a physical perspective. All of the things that we currently offer to people in the office, we want to ensure that in some way, shape or form, we're able to offer those to employees who are based remotely.
Sounds like it's really well integrated into your culture, even before the pandemic. So to me, that sounds like your point of differentiation, if I could summarize all that. One thing I noticed from listening to you speak as well in the industry, I understand that global mobility is also something that's ingrained in your culture, and it's one of the key pillars around your flexible work environment. And I'm interested to kind of understand, it almost sounds like Xero likes to provide their employees with almost like a gig-like experience internally, or I guess you could probably refer to it as a bit of a secondment internally. Can you share with us how you take the opportunities internally, you find the interested employees, and you kind of you match that so that that enables those parallel opportunities to happen, and what success looks like around that?
Yeah, absolutely. So that flexibility piece that, you know, I've been talking about for a number of years, we always thought about it beyond the where, being the, you know, where you're doing your work from, whether it be the office or home or a, you know, a library or an Uber, and the when, you know, when do I start and finish my day? And even beyond the sort of how, the technology piece, you know, we've always had great cloud, single sign-on cloud-based technology that's made it very easy for employees to work flexibly. But beyond that, thinking about the career as well, so flexibility in their career. So not just providing great learning and development opportunities, not just providing budget for them to go and do some personal and professional development, but thinking about those opportunities, whether it be projects, whether it be roles, secondments, relocations. And so even pre-COVID, so in 2019, we had around 50 employees, I think, that were transitioned internationally. So moving from one country to another, that's a quite significant number. And what we started to do, and you know, this has been put on hold, but it won't be long before it ramps up again, is really bringing together all those different aspects and bringing together our talent and succession, so our talent management and succession planning, and our mobility. So, you know, our HR, our recruitment, and our OD teams, we brought them together every 2 months and talked about who are the people who are our successors for these key roles. Who are the employees that have raised their interested in an international or national secondment or relocation, and what opportunities do we have available? So kind of continually bringing those three things together to ensure that we know who's got an interest, where there's an opportunity available, and where we've got a succession need as well. So those three things are quite tightly aligned. And the other area is just more broadly the opportunities available. So every role at Xero is advertised internally. They're surfaced up generally through Slack, which is our internal sort of social media tool or comms tool. And we're just thinking, and we have, you know, another project that's underway that's thinking about how can we surface those more? How can we make those roles and those opportunities more visible? You know, Slack can get a little noisy. There's a lot of channels and a lot of information that comes through there. So yeah, we're just thinking about other ways that we can surface that, whether it's through an app or some kind of, here are the roles, the functions, the countries I'm interested in, and generating some notifications to employees. So just trying to think a little bit more smartly about how we can keep creating those opportunities internally, because we want to keep people, right? Rather we kept them and they saw and were aware of and had opportunities to grow and develop and move into other areas, and rather than they try and find that elsewhere outside of Xero.
That makes complete sense.
With the, with different variants, with snap lockdowns, with restricted travel, with visa difficulties, with travel exemption difficulties, I mean, that's a lot going on, right? And so this whole mobility program, how do you give people the same experience if they can't get on a plane? Have you put thought around this? Because I think that when everyone thinks, I think when it first happened, sorry, I think I just cut out there. I think when COVID first happened, everyone thought it was a 2020 conversation, and then now it's rolled into 2021, and we think that's going to be 2021. We're going to sort of be on top by 2022. But what if this goes on for a few years? How do you replicate exactly what you're doing for these people who you can't physically move?
Yeah, that's kind of part of this project that we're looking at, and what keeps coming up is there are always interesting projects going on at Xero. There is always a need for help and resource on those projects, and we have a lot of very smart, talented, competent employees around the world. So how do we bring those things together? How, without creating a huge competency framework and a complicated kind of IT platform, how can we simply have employees kind of flag the areas they're interested in, whether it's this team, here are the competencies that I have, here are my interests, and then how can the business quickly and easily surface up the projects, the initiatives that they're working on, and allow the two to kind of come together. Because a lot of the time, it doesn't require someone to be permanently relocated or have to be physically in another location. So that's kind of where we're at the moment. We're just grappling with how can we make that simple without creating a 12-month project and costing lots of money. And so that, and we're doing it already in certain areas. We, again, there are certain Slack channels where those opportunities are currently posted. Employees have the opportunity to go and look at those. Our HR initiatives are always seeded with employees outside of HR. So we're always either shoulder tapping or, again, surfacing where we have a project that's going to be running. Here's what it's about. Here's what we intend to achieve. We're looking for people who can be involved, contribute, X hours a week. If you have these skills, competency, interest, your manager's okay with it, come on board and get involved. So it's a little more ad hoc and a little more manual at the moment. We're just trying to think about how we can be a little more smarter and a little more automated in the way that we do that.
Yeah, Ryan, you alluded to the kind of the when, the where, and the how and the what earlier. And I'm kind of curious to dive into that a little bit more because, I guess what we've been talking about today is very much about enabling the employees, empowering them, giving them the control about, where they work, how they work, and when they work, and then how we can kind of tap into that and connect that with opportunities within Xero. I wonder if you could talk to, do you think that giving the employees, enabling them to determine that when, where, how, what, in relation to their roles that they have now or future roles within Xero, do you see a direct line of result in productivity and profits? And if so, are you measuring that? And what's that looking like for yourselves over the last 18 months?
Yeah, for sure. Well, one of the things that I was hit with very early on when I started at Xero was there was the culture here, and a lot of that did stem from the early days with Rod, right, the former CEO and founder of Xero, Rod Drury. So he really early on understood the importance of creating a great culture. He understood the importance of employees and how if you built this great culture and you had a really engaged workforce, well, that's naturally going to translate into achieving your company's goals. So for us, that, you know, has been our growth into new regions, our growth in customer numbers, our growth in revenue, etc. So, and his kind of view and what we've continued to do is, and I joke when I'm speaking at conferences that, you know, we employ adult human beings, and if you trust and empower them and are transparent with them, you trust and empower them to do the right thing, 19 out of 20 of them will. And so don't build your culture and your policies and your frameworks for the one, build them for the 19 and deal with the one. And so that it kind of extends to every aspect of the employee experience. So, you know, flexible working is a great example. Yeah, we had very, very few formal flexible working arrangements in place. We just built a culture of trust and empowerment, where as long as you had an agreement with your manager, as long as you were providing and asking for feedback and that arrangement was working, then that's okay. You know, we weeded out areas of the business that perhaps had a little more old school view of, oh, well, if they're not in the office, they're just going to be on Netflix, or they're going to be skiving, or, you know, well, that's a performance issue. That's not a flexible working issue. So, you know, trying to just separate out a performance issue from a policy or a guideline issue. And as I say, extends beyond flexible work, extends to everything. You know, another great thing that we did was we used to have sick leave. So we had 10 days sick leave globally. And we knew there were some other things that we wanted to do to destigmatize mental well-being. And it was just through a few conversations, we just decided to do something really simple. And it was just to flip from sick leave to well-being leave and expand the reason that you could use that. So it wasn't just because you were physically ill. We understood that there were times when employees needed to take a day. You didn't need to tell us why. You don't need to justify it. We trust that you need to take a day, and that it's better for you and for us for you to take that day when you need to take it than you to feel guilty and not take it, or you've got to lie and say it's a sick day. So, you know, again, we trust employees to take those days when they need to take them. We certainly do measure, for sure. We love data, as I say. We're very data driven at Xero. We have an engagement tool. We measure everything like from our overall engagement to our ENPS, our Employee Net Promoter Score. So our Employee Net Promoter Score for a number of years now has been above plus 40. I think currently the latest is it's plus 44. We measure other things, specific questions. So we ask a question, do you feel that your work has an impact on Xero's purpose? That's currently at 95% of employees answering that with a positive response. Another one is, you have enough freedom to decide how to do your work. 87% of employees answered positively to that. And then we've got other things like turnover, you know, growth in subscriber numbers, revenue, cost control, all those good measures that the executive team like. And, you know, we like to draw a tenuous line between all our efforts around employee engagement and the employee experience and to how they're positively impacting on those. So, yeah, absolutely. We, you know, that trust and empowerment is just, for us, trust and empowerment and transparency is so key to our culture. And we absolutely see how that positively impacts both the employee experience and all of those key metrics that we measure and hold ourselves to account to.
Ryan, I've been taking notes as you've been talking. I've been absolutely inspired, and I've got to say that, you know, you are, and other guests we've had on this show, you are exactly the reason why we do what we do, talking to our purpose, and that's really looking at work and mobility, global mobility during and post-COVID. I just love so many of the things that you do. I love how the empowering the employees, the trust, the cater for the 19 as opposed to the one. There's been a whole handful and bucketful and suitcase full of gems, and I thank you for being so generous with your time and your information. I know that, you know, I always say if someone watches this show and they get a little one gem out of it, then we've done our job and helped contribute to the new normal. It's not even normal anymore, it's just the new. And, you know, you are certainly Xero, and what you're doing is certainly at the forefront of that. So again, thank you so much for your time and for your knowledge and your wisdom.
Likewise, Ryan. Thanks. It's been really, insightful, as Jamie said. But certainly, for me, I was particularly, I don't know if humbled's the right word, but I was impressed by the fact that you guys went to the next level around well-being, and you actually unpacked those areas of well-being and mindfulness. And they're all lots of buzzwords, but you've got to hit the rubber on the road, right? So I think you guys are certainly leading edge when it comes to that. So thank you on behalf of all the HR people watching and listening for your insights on those areas.
No problem. Thanks for the opportunity. I always love chewing the fat with some of my peers and having the opportunity to talk about some of the great things that Xero does. So, you know, we're not perfect, but we do a lot of great things, and always great to share those with others. So yeah, always happy to catch up with other peers as well. If anyone's ever wanting to discuss any of these things, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. Always happy to have a catch up and talk through, because with those interactions, there's always something that I learn as well from someone else. So yeah, appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thanks, Ryan.
Absolutely. Okay. Thanks, Ryan. See you later.
Thank you.
Bye.